Hello and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. Oh, everything's wonderful in the world today, Phil, isn't it? That's Phil. I'm Connor. Hi. That's how we introduce the show.
Oh.
Everything's great, isn't it, Phil?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Big UFC event around the corner. I have not looked at social media or talked to any of my coworkers in the last few days. I don't know why I'm even saying this.
Why would you need to?
Yeah, I don't know why that felt like necessary background for the wonderful day that I'm having. But anything you'd like to tell me, or? I mean, there was a sort of trepidation in your voice.
No, everything is going fine in the MMA media landscape.
Good.
There's been no, apocalyptic holes ripped out of the heart of journalistic integrity, as lacking as it was in this space. Nothing has happened. It's all fine.
Okay, good. There seems like a lot of specific negatives for you to bring up, but I'll take you at your word for it. UFC 299's around the corner. That's good news, right?
Mm-hmm. Good card.
It's a very good card. This is how the UFC operates now. We know that. I gotta say, I mean, this actually feels like their most stacked pay-per-view possibly of the year and last several months combined, of the previous year. Because they're all obviously stacked. They're always robbing Peter to pay Paul with these pay-per-views, but this one is like really consistent across the entire card.
Yeah, it's also odd because they've got a big anniversary show coming up, and
true,
a big round number.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly they do kind of the same stuff within the pay-per-view space as they do for regular cards and pay-per-views. Is that they will have something which is technically a pay-per-view in the run-up to a big event, but it will be
just
a women's bantamweight main event and a flyweight main event or something like that. It'll be it'll have two title fights on it, but it will not be the level of stack that this is.
It'll at least be the stuff they don't care about as much.
Yeah, it seems A, very good, and B, like they've kind of run the risk of UFC 300 not being that good because they've stacked a whole bunch of stuff in this one.
Yeah, I mean, for those who are not aware, let's run it down. This is just the main card. And, of course, bantamweight title is on the line in the main event. Sean O'Malley, Marlon, Chito, Vera 2. Okay, maybe you have some asterisks. Maybe it's not the fight you wanted to see, yada, yada, yada. Still, good matchup, bantamweight title fight. I'll take it. Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Rising action star versus bona fide action star in the co-main event. Kevin Holland versus Michael Page. Possibly the best person Michael Page has ever fought. He's making his UFC debut at approximately 39 years old. Weird, but interesting. I'll take it. There's a smack of pride booking to something like that. Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena. And Petr Yan versus Song Yadong. Does he continue his downfall against one of the more inconsistent destroyers in the bantamweight division? Or can he get back on track? A very interesting fight one way or the other. I mean, that's just the main card. I mean, they managed to put a good heavyweight fight on this card. Curtis Blades, Jailton Almeida. And it's not even close to the main event. The blessings abound.
I'm so glad they did that.
Blessings abound. There's just a lot to like about this card. And I think without any further ado, we should probably just jump right into the main event. It's not the one you wanted, right, Phil? I mean, for a multitude of
bullshit.
reasons. Yeah. Let me hear
it. Well, you know why? Marlon Vera does not deserve this title shot. He hasn't looked good. His record is underwhelming, and there's two incredibly good contenders waiting in the wings.
Yeah.
If they were Corey Sandhagen's getting the next shot, I'd be like, maybe Merab's actually done more at this point. But Corey's so exciting, I can understand why they would make that choice.
Yeah. And he's got
Merab,
the tenure.
Obviously, yeah. Merab, obviously, looking absolutely incredible at the moment. I've talked on other episodes about why, they need to get him in there as quickly as possible before he falls to pieces. But, I can say it again, Chito hasn't even looked good.
Yeah.
This has solely been booked because O'Malley wants the fight back.
Yeah. It's sort of like with Merab and Corey both in the division at the same time. It's sort of like you have late prime Tony Ferguson. That's Corey Sandhagen, the accumulation of accomplishments. Just, wow, this guy's beaten everybody. Yep. And just pre-title shot RDA in the division at the same time. One's got the accomplishments, the other has the momentum. And instead the title shot is being given to who's a slightly shitty lightweight.
I mean, Donald Cerrone, it would be Donald.
Yeah,
Cerrone,
that's
a Donald Cerrone who hasn't been looking very good.
Very, very good parallel. Yeah, Donald Cerrone off of the third Ben Henderson fight. You're like,
yeah.
Did he win that?
Yeah.
That is very much what it feels like. Is it still a good fight between two fighters? Is there a story behind it? Yeah, I still like it, but.
Yeah, it's still a great fight just because it's a fight between top 10 bantamweights and they're just never bad.
Right.
You just cannot go wrong. But yeah, it doesn't stand out over anything else on the card, and it's on its merits appalling.
It is also
it's competitive merits.
It just feels weird. I mean I know you personally loathe Chito Vera. It's a miracle that we're able to work together because. Of course he is my boy. But I get it. His style, it just doesn't make any sense. I've been frustrated by fighters like that many times. Too many times to count, so I get it. But it's also Sean O'Malley. I still don't fully feel like he hasn't yet reached the I know exactly what to expect stage. His career has been very spotty and strange. A lot of his most impressive wins are against relative nobodies. And then a lot of his tougher fights are simply not really convincing as results. I mean, there's no denying the convincing nature of his win over Aljamain Sterling. But the fight with Poirier was not decisive. The fight with Pedro Munoz, not decisive at all, didn't in fact go to a decision. In fact, it also looked like he was losing. And then there was the fight with Chito, who is the most inconsistent and illogical fighter in the division. And that combined with the Pedro fight, two fights where people have just sort of kicked Sean's legs, his big scrawny legs, and he has just not looked good. So there's a weird feeling that I think Sean O'Malley might be a very difficult test for a lot of other people in this division. Somehow it seems like maybe his most poisonous matchup is a guy who sort of couldn't beat 2023 Pedro Munoz convincingly.
Yeah, I mean, because Sean O'Malley couldn't either.
Well, fair enough. Yeah. Just styles make fights, I guess, is the thing. But the styles of fights these guys have been in have not necessarily given me a super confident picture of either of them.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is that I will say, of the two of them, I think O'Malley has impressed me a lot more. His stock has risen a good deal in my eyes.
Yeah.
Over his last few fights. Whereas Chito's has just not. He's just the same guy.
Yeah. Which is to say a guy who has actually like a ton of convincing wins that just don't seem to make sense. Like the Pedro one is the lone example recently, which is truly not convincing. All the others are like, he won, but why? It just doesn't make sense. It's just because he just hurts the other guy who's like out striking him a lot of the time. Yeah. So what happened in their first fight? I mean, why is this rematch happening? Basically, not much. Pretty tepid affair. But that's to be expected. It was just the first round. Feeling out process was still underway. Chito Vera got a few kicks off on Sean O'Malley, which appeared to either cause or aggravate an injury. Not the first time that's happened to Sean O'Malley. In fact, I fucking forgot about his very early UFC fight with
was it Sukumtat?
Yeah, Andre Sukumtat, who also crippled him on his scrawny legs, and then insanely chose to wrestle him rather than just a ton of. The stars have aligned for Sean O'Malley to make it here, is the feeling, and likewise for Chito.
Yeah, I mean, he just seems to be someone where bits fly off him when he fights.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a terrible thing to be against Chito, because Chito is just one of the most durable fighters to ever do it. And Chito is also large and not going to panic his way into a massive counter. One of the reasons why Chito is difficult to hurt is that he's rarely out over his feet. He's also one of the reasons why he's easy to outstrike is that he's tending to just plod around, walking after people.
Yeah.
But he is not going to be surging after Sean O'Malley, like, diving into a pull counter like Aljamain Sterling did. He's going to be slowly and steadily walking around after him, occasionally trying to cut him off with low kicks or something like that, along those lines.
Yeah.
And I mean, the main thing I couldn't understand is why O'Malley felt so uncomfortable trying to jab Vera.
Well, I think the low kicks are part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big part of it. I mean, one thing I will say, weirdly enough, for all the criticism and like question marks I have just thrown at Sean O'Malley, he has sort of become like a byword for me in the last few months. Every time I see a fighter attempting to fight off the back foot against an opponent and sort of losing control of the fight as a result. Because this is something specifically I think Sean O'Malley does particularly well. Certainly by the standards of MMA. He has an excellent jab, and long reach, and he knows how to use these things to control an opponent without having to step forward and pursue them. And what it comes down to is using that lead hand and the lead foot, which lines up with it, to constantly threaten to penetrate the opponent's stance, to get around their lead foot and align the lead hand with the center of their body. This is how you control somebody. You create not a physical obstacle, but a dynamic obstacle of the jab that, if they run into it, will have huge stopping power, even if you don't throw it hard, because it lines up center mass. Just like when you're shooting somebody, they teach you shoot center mass. You hit them right in the chest, right in the chin, straight in the middle of their body, with that lead hand. And that lead hand is the closest thing to them. That lead shoulder protects your chin, and because of the angle of the fighter stance, it hides your center line. So this is the jockeying for position that really good boxers do, is constantly trying to probe the opponent's stance, open them up, square them up essentially, while taking their own center line out of the opponent's sights. And, this is what you do when you're just circling around each other, both fighters moving to the left. A lot of MMA fighters do this very aimlessly. They take their jab offline. They sort of neutralize themselves in the effort to get away, and it just encourages the other guy to chase. Sean O'Malley is difficult to chase because he remains threatening. And that is always the best kind of defensive movement. And yeah, I think this is why he struggled with both Chito and Pedro Munoz, because one great counter to somebody planting weight onto their front foot and pivoting clockwise is to just kick the outside of their leg. And of course there are ways to deal with this, but you have to be ready to check or catch or counter or get out of range of those kicks. And this is just something that Sean O'Malley is not very good at. Mm-hmm. He's got the full kit he's got the full understanding of positional fighting in boxing, but he has yet to, it seems, add in the real consideration of kicks to his game. So it just seems like a big flaw for him. And I think that's exactly what it was. Chito is one of the most jabbable fighters out there, but he is ready to eat a shot, and he's always ready to fire off with the kick. And if he sees you constantly circling to his right, I mean, even Chito's tiny brain is going to be able to interpret that as an opening for an outside low kick. So I think that's it. Sean just didn't feel comfortable for the reason that he lost the fight. Every time he tried to move left, line that jab up, Chito kicked him in the leg, and it was hurting him.
Yeah.
It's a very specific tactical thing that determined the fight, but it seems like we've now seen it crop up more than once for Sean O'Malley. And the jab and the positional adjustment is such a huge part of why he is good that it seems like it's really a defining factor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that really is just it. Is that he's just, fighting out of that very long stance. He's leaving his leg out in front of him.
Yep.
That is just, he's using it for a pivot. He's just not taking it away.
Yeah.
And it's just, if opponents who take what's there can build up small leads on him, and he seems like he genuinely doesn't care about those leads because he's sure he's going to knock them out with his hands at some point.
Yeah.
As the impression I got from both the Vera and the Munoz fights, and in neither case was I actually convinced that was true. In part because they are Chito Vera and Pedro Munoz, and no one has ever done that.
Yep. But these are, I mean, are they the best low kickers in the division? The two of them, they pretty much are, right?
No. There's Gutierrez and Martinez.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but Gutierrez can't pressure. I would be actually quite interested to see Gutierrez O'Malley. If Gutierrez ever gets back on track, which I don't know if that's going to happen now, and O'Malley loses the title, that would be a great back in the saddle matchup, because I'd be very curious to see Sean deal with that.
Can you do stuff against the most low kickable man?
Yeah.
In the division.
And Sean, can you just think about a guy who's not aggressive at all, but has devastating low kick? Yeah, good shout. But for people who control the space and low kick effectively and consistently, that's a defining element of Chito and Pedro's games. And if you consider that is like the sole reason Sean struggled with both of them, which I think it is, then it's like, yeah, of course, those were his difficult fights. It's the guys who come forward and low kick. He just hasn't learned how to deal with it. It's a glaring weakness, which really, I mean, this is both a deliberate and accidental pun. It cripples the way that his game works. He needs the pivot. That is his defense. That's how he sets up his counters. That's how he opens up the opponent's stance, and it's how he keeps his jab there so he can control the distance. I love it, but you got to know how to check kicks, and he doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah, I think one of his solutions, as it were, against Jan was that he just spent a lot of the fight southpaw.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a really weird one, because a lot of the time the southpaw orthodox dynamic is quite straightforward. But, both of these guys have been actually relatively... I mean, Chito's so square a lot of the time that it doesn't really matter. But he's actually quite a comfortable southpaw fighter. again, and he's not actually a particularly different southpaw fighter.
No.
I mean, both. Yeah, that's what I mean. Is like both of these guys. They're not, Cub Swanson, where they're like,
left kick.
I fight like this in orthodox, and I fight like this in southpaw. They're both actually like primarily, lead hand dependent, whichever stance they're fighting out of.
Mm-hmm.
But I found myself thinking, like, because obviously the same thing was true of Piotr Jan, who Sugar Sean fought. And yeah, the sort of open stance, close stance dynamic there was, it was essentially just a stalemate. The whole fight was extremely competitive, I think, partially because you cannot stalemate Piotr in that kind of way. But, like, I found myself wondering, is Chito going to be good at fighting a southpaw? Has Chito ever fought southpaw? Because Corey switched a bit against him, but not really very much.
Yeah, as always, not something that I actually looked at that specifically when obviously I should have. But I don't think so, is the answer.
The main thing is that I think his boxing game is broadly the same from either stance. So Chito might just mirror Sugar's stance in the classic MMA way, and just try to continue to have the same fight. But I'm not sure if he low kicks as much when he's fighting southpaw.
Yeah.
Because I think, and that's the thing. I wonder if O'Malley goes southpaw to take away the inside low kick. I wonder if Chito then just starts trying to box with him from southpaw. That's my initial read on how the fight might go. Again, it might be nothing. I haven't.
No. I think that's. First of all, I think you're absolutely right. That is just a major answer for O'Malley. Classically overdone.
Classically MMA answer.
Classic MMA overcorrection, but it helps that he, as you said, is actually his boxing game pretty much works the same way as a southpaw. So he doesn't, it helps that he doesn't neuter himself when he makes that huge adjustment. I'm sure that Chito can. I mean, if I'm Chito's coaches, first of all, I'm the most frustrated man on the planet.
Right. Yeah. Because this is the thing. You're telling Chito to, like, have a game plan.
Try to win a round, Chito. And then 4 minutes goes by.
More than he hits you instead of relying on him exploding when you do.
Yeah. Well, if it works, it works. But if I'm in Chito's corner, it's such an obvious element of the fight. Again, it's rare that we have such a specific technical thing, just like scream that it is a decisive factor. But it is. I think it's pretty clear it is. And so if I'm in Chito's corner, it's low kicking no matter what stance he's in. We are practicing mirroring his stance and just chopping the outside of his leg when he tries to pivot. We're threatening him with punches, so he has to pivot. Like this is a 3-part game plan. Pressure him up to the fence so he can't backpedal.
Yep.
Jab at his face so he's got to pivot, because a pivot is the best form of defense to any punch that's coming at you. It leaves you in range to counter, and it takes the targets the opponent's aiming at out of range at the same time. A pivot is a beautiful, efficient thing in boxing. So you jab at his face so he pivots to outposition you, and then you walk him into a low kick. That's the whole game plan. It should be simple enough that even Chito could follow it. But just because Chito's game sort of looks the same as a southpaw, it's not really clear to me if the same sort of solutions will naturally occur to him. I mean, certainly to his credit, he knew to kick Sean in the leg in their first fight, at least in orthodox.
Yep.
That did not escape him. So I would assume he's capable of doing it again. I mean, it would be hilarious if he didn't, given that it is the thing that won him the first fight. I'm going to assume he's going to be prepared to kick the leg no matter which stance O'Malley adopts.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It would be so stupid not to.
Yeah, that it's possible because it is Chito, but I have to assume he will.
Because it's MMA.
I have to assume he will. And if that's the case, I'm actually left in the uncomfortable position of thinking, can Sean O'Malley win without knocking Chito out? Which as yet seems impossible.
Either he has to knock him out, or he has to just edge him on points for every single round. For basically the whole fight.
Yeah, but he's got to
win 3-2.
He's got to do that while getting crippled.
Yeah,
which, as we said, doesn't just mean, it isn't just the typical Chito thing of, the other guy's hitting him a ton, but he's clearly doing lots of damage. In this case, to the legs. It would be the thing of he's doing a lot of damage, and therefore the other guy isn't able to hit him a ton. Because that is such an effective counter to Sean's really principled boxing game, and it takes away the jab. Again, it's not like it's a thing that just fundamentally destroys the jab. It's just that there's another thing you have to learn to keep your jab effective, and that is checking kicks. And Sean hasn't learned it. So basically, if this fight starts and Sean O'Malley still has not learned to check kicks, I think he's going to lose. That's my read. I think it is that decisive a factor, which is so crazy to say because very rarely do I feel that's the case.
Yep.
But that's how it feels. Unless he has dedicated a ton of time to checking kicks, which is possible. He's had a lot of time to learn, and it's so obvious that that's a problem for him. Then his jab is going to be taken away from him, and his game will fall apart as a result. And he will be in there against an opponent who can soak up all the punishment in the world and deliver it back threefold with half the volume, but with the added problem that he is not going to be able to deliver all that punishment Chito's capable of absorbing because his game has been nipped in the bud by the low kicks.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's the question. You think Sean has learned to check? I'm going to pick Chito. Weirdly. Chito Vera champion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good basic style matchup for just the sheer fact that Chito's the most unhurtable man in MMA.
Pretty much.
But no, I think I'm going to pick O'Malley. There's been too many people who have, people have solved Chito, or people have been very close to solving Chito.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas O'Malley's losses have been... his one loss has been weird.
Yeah.
But even those, like, the Munoz fight, it could be argued that he was definitely getting into it as the fight got stopped.
Yeah.
And... I don't know. He's just impressed me more. I thought the Yarn fight was a slaughter in the making. That he was just going to give himself.
We both did.
That he was going to back himself up to the fence, as he always does. He was going to get pushed up against it. He was going to get ruined with combination work against the fence. He was going to get low kicked. He did get low kicked a bunch in that fight, but it turns out that he's mentally and physically tougher than we gave him credit for, mm-hmm. and that he's also just, as you said, he's just a technically coherent back foot fighter. He's comfortable there, and he's genuinely dangerous there. And
he is one of the better boxers
Chito's
in the UFC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chito's just so... He's so strategically incoherent.
Yep.
He's just going to walk around after people, waiting for them to die.
Yep.
And waiting for them to get into a striking match with him. And waiting for them to be in his range. He's just going to follow them around in a circle forever until that happens.
Yeah. And that is the trouble. I mean, the strategy... Because what I want to say in counter to that is the strategy is so simple this time.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, all it should take is one good adjustment from Sean O'Malley. If he has one reliable answer to not just eat full and flush every low kick that comes his way, I can't trust Chito to adjust. So
Yeah.
I mean, it would be just as crazy as for Chito not to hammer the low kicks as often as he can, for Sean to come into this fight not ready to deal with them. The only reason I'm picking Chito is I haven't seen Sean do that yet. I mean, I've seen him come up with some answers, I guess, like the stance switching, the big one. But yeah, like if he comes in with one good answer, better yet, a couple good ways of dealing with the low kicks and keeping his game flowing, and then he should. I can't trust Chito to come up with a further answer beyond that because he can't think that way. It's not in him.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, I just trust O'Malley to, as much as I trust either of these guys, which is not very much. I trust him to just rise to the occasion more than I frankly trust Chito to.
Sure.
I trust him to come in with a game plan. I trust him to, he had his fight against Sterling where he was saying he'd hurt his back or whatever it was. Again, another example of the way this guy is on the Anthony Pettis going to explode soon train.
Mm-hmm.
And another reason why I think your call is probably quite a good one. But, he knew he couldn't be taken down. And so he made absolutely sure not to make that happen. And yeah, capitalized on his one opportunity. I just think that there is actually a fight here where he just lands big shots every round, and he just duplicates what Corey Sandhagen did without the takedowns.
Yeah,
and with a bit more pop on his strikes. And yeah, Chito just continues to just walk him around the cage without ever cutting him off and without ever expecting him not to fall into jab range.
Yeah. God, it would be so funny it'd be so funny if he didn't even come up with the answer. He just goes southpaw and Chito didn't expect it. Or for whatever weird
idiot. I think, to be honest, although it would be immensely disappointing from a competitive standpoint, it would be pretty funny if his leg fell off again.
Yeah, that too. That too. Yeah, just the same shit. I mean, 29-year-old with back problems.
Yeah.
He probably like blew his...
Or he just breaks both his hands like Faber did against Brown.
Yeah. Yep.
Just by the end of the 5th round, he's just circling away, like trying to throw elbows with both of his hands dangling at the wrists.
Just 2 swollen sacks of pulp just hanging out the ends of his arms.
He's landed like 200 significant strikes on Chito, who's just looking utterly unfazed.
Yeah. Chito, eats 100 strikes in a round and then goes back to the corner and literally takes a power nap between rounds. That's how calm he is. Yeah. Sean O'Malley. I mean, he is really fragile. It's a weird thing for such a guy to be so talented and so skilled in certain ways to also be capable of. I mean, I assume he like blew his back out vaping. Like he's just not. More so than Anthony Pettis. He does not have like the durability of any kind of natural athlete, weirdly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Anthony Pettis was an insanely tough person who you got the impression, who just picked up injuries that then spiraled into other
He had a Chito-like career of absorbing damage that made him turn into a guy who got tons of injuries, you know?
Yep.
So, yeah, just a weird dynamic to have in a title fight, which is, despite being that straightforward, because of who these guys are, it's still not really predictable. There are a couple, I was expecting your case for O'Malley to be mostly just bile against Chito.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you made a pretty good case. Like, yeah, he is a guy who rises to the occasion. And like I said, just a couple good ideas. Do I trust Chito to then make a further mid-fight adjustment to answer those answers? I really don't.
Yeah.
So all he has to do is rise to the occasion.
I've seen O'Malley solve tough style matchups, and I just haven't seen Chito do it.
I haven't seen Chito solve anyone.
Yep.
I've seen him do, he has a Gordian knot game plan. He solves every problem the exact same fucking way.
Yes.
Chop through it. So yeah,
I mean, if Alexander the Great had slowly walked forward into the Gordian knot and just waited for it to part.
Yeah.
Under his inexorable walking forward, then, the Chito Vera game plan.
Yeah, he breaks the Gordian knot.
I'm going to turn out to be tougher than this rope in the end.
Just sort of walks through it like a velvet rope at a club until it snaps.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
They come back like a day later and he's still just walking through and just starting to fray at the edges.
Yeah. Weird title fight, man. I still like it. It's still very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great. It's a fight I would be really happy to see if it wasn't for the title.
Yeah, I'm still happy to see it, but I totally get it, and I'm 100% sympathetic to that position. I get it. Anyway, I'll pick Chito, you pick Sean. We will see. Let's just hope it's funny. And with that, let's take a break. When we come back, Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint-Denis, Kevin Holland versus Michael Venom Page, Piotr Jan, Song Yadong, Gilbert Burns, Jack Della Maddalena, whatever the hell else we can fit. Anything else will have to be in a bonus episode. All of that, more, less, who knows, after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
And we're back for the co-main event of UFC 299. That is Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint-Denis. About which I believe it was Val Dewar, or Dewar, or however it's pronounced, who was saying and baiting a lot of people. None other than our friend Kyle McLaughlin took the bait on this. When he said
Kyle?
Taking the bait.
Taking the bait getting angry over the internet?
where Val said that Dustin Poirier, cool name. Benoit Saint-Denis, French name. Of course, Kyle couldn't resist pointing out, I think Poirier might be French.
Well, I mean, you can, yeah. Also, one of the rare ones in the UFC where American people have
we've retained the pronunciation.
And yes, still have pronunciation, much as it would have been fantastic to have Dustin Poirier against, well, Benoit Saint Denis.
Mm-hmm. Saint Denis is good.
Yeah. Luckily, we've got some exotic French flavor in this one.
That's right. Well, I believe that's because Poirier is from Louisiana, where some people
like
still
Poirier,
speak French.
Still pronounce things. Yeah.
Or at least Creole French.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this to me is really an opportunity, a classic MMA match style MMA matchmaking, or any combat sports matchmaking. Young guy, super violent, takes on super violent old guy, and that seems to be the question that will sort of determine how you predict this fight, what you expect to happen. Because looking at them on a surface level and forgetting that time is a factor, you gotta say Dustin Poirier is, the benefit of being so much later into his career He's just a much more sophisticated striker than Benoit Saint-Denis.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not a knock on Saint-Denis. It's just that, Poirier used to be a much more simplistic striker himself. He's had a long time to develop his game and polish his technique against the best in the world. Truly, Poirier has had a very long career, especially considering he is such an action fighter. He fought his first fight with Chan Sung Jung, which was by no means his first UFC fight. That was in 2012.
Yeah, that was one of the first 5-round main events, right?
I think you're right. And that was one of
the first 5-round non-title fight main events. The first thing where they were like all main events 5 rounds.
I think you're right.
And he got that because he was already a very established fighter in the division. He was already ranked.
Yeah, and came into the UFC as like a hot prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that might have actually been the first one. Good memory.
Really?
Well,
it was a good choice.
Certainly it was not the standard. For some reason, I thought the first one was Hendo Shogun. Wasn't that a main event of 5-round?
Yeah. But they're all around that era. It was basically around the time that they brought them in for the first time.
Yeah. If it wasn't the first one, then it was not yet a standard thing because the last fight night non-title fight headline show before that was Gustafsson versus Thiago Silva, and that was a 3-round main event. Yeah. So it may have in fact been the very first 5-round main event. Good memory, Phil.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even remember that. I just remembered it as being one of them.
Quick,
long ass time ago.
You've only met me in person once. What color are my eyes? If you don't know you, then you don't love me.
It's hazel.
Wow. That is, I say brown. But I said hazel when I was a kid, and I didn't want to say brown. So pretty good.
See, no, not only did I get it sort of right, but I got it wrong in a complimentary way.
Yeah, you got it right and flattered me in the process. Wow, my eyes are not quite brown. You're right. Yeah. So, that just one example. That is and even that was a war, an absolute war. And it was 12 years ago. And Dustin Poirier is still going strong. He fought tooth and nail and did not look remotely bad, despite ultimately getting KO'd, just last summer against Justin Gaethje. He still looks great. He looks, really better than ever. He has actually genuinely become a very good boxer. But yeah, it just to put it in perspective, that's how old Dustin Poirier is as a fighter. He has been through the wars many, many times for well over a typical fighter's career. And Benoit Saint-Denis has not. He is still young. He really keeps succeeding, it seems, because like all young men, he innately believes in his own immortality. And so that's the question. Is now the time, basically, for Dustin Poirier? Has death come knocking? Because otherwise I feel like...
I don't think there's any... Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
I don't think there's any reason to assume that, but again, this is one of those fights where if that does happen, you're like, okay, this is pretty much it for Dustin Poirier. We don't pick him against elite fighters anymore.
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't know.
2 KOs on the trot, having a fairly low rate of actually taking fights. It's going to be a year between fights. He's going to get older and slower between each one of them. And as you said, this looks like a good style matchup.
Yeah.
I think it's not just the fact that, Saint-Denis is, just much less coherent than Poirier is. He doesn't have all Poirier's defense, his ability to shots off with his elbows and roll and slip and, actually avoid things. He mostly overwhelms people with sheer firepower.
Yep.
That has never worked against Dustin Poirier, not really.
It really hasn't. Not once.
More than that, there are just unknowns about the fight, which, again, if you look at MMA, just find yourself, there are things that you don't know where you should still pick them pretty much every time. And that is, like, Saint-Denis looks like a southpaw's southpaw.
Yeah, that's something we should mention. This is two southpaws matchup, an unusual matchup. Yeah.
But yeah, Saint-Denis is a big, like, rear hand, rear body kick guy.
Yep.
Do I trust him to be any good in a close stance matchup? I don't. Do I trust Dustin Poirier to be good in a close stance southpaw matchup? Absolutely.
Yes, I do.
I've seen him do it multiple times.
I trust Dustin Poirier to be
incredibly good jabber and right hooker.
Yep. He out jabbed Conor McGregor.
Yep.
And out low kicked him.
Yes, he uses his inside low kick very diligently against southpaws and calf kick. Like, I don't trust, as much as, Saint-Denis might just win through sheer firepower. He might patch Poirier with a head kick like Gaethje did. I don't trust his game to work against someone like Poirier, who's not just like good at that style matchup, but like really good. He's a really good close stance southpaw.
Yes. I think that pretty much sums it up. I mean, as it's, do not let this give you the impression that we are not excited to see this fight. Cause it looks like sheer blood and guts, and a beautiful, not like, co-main event with obviously huge implications for Saint-Denis if he were to win. But he is simply a much more simplistic striker than Poirier. As you said, if he throws the lead hand, it's a right hook, and usually after the left hand. He's got a huge left kick and tends to basically, I would say he has pretty good pressuring footwork, and he knows how to cut off the cage with his strikes. But usually the action doesn't really start until he gets the opponent fully cornered. And once he does, it is usually just swinging hooks. His head stays perfectly in the middle. There is very little attention paid to defense. In fact, I would say no attention paid to defense. Like I said, people don't hurt him. He hasn't been like hurt and knocked out yet, so he just fights as if it can't happen. There is a power to that.
Yeah.
Certainly. I mean, just being willing to take risks that smarter fighters won't take. I'm not saying he's stupid, but more experienced, savvier fighters won't take. There's a huge power to that you can just basically break the rules and shock the opponent, but it's pretty crude. Like Poirier has not once, despite all the wars he's been in, no one has ever simply blasted through his defenses with just like sheer firepower. He's been knocked out, but they tend to be really well-placed single shots or counters. And even those results are pretty few and far between and tend to come against, not just skilled punchers, but massive punchers as well. Gaethje, Conor McGregor, Michael Johnson. Yeah. These are all either very quick or very powerful and very skilled. And Saint-Denis is not that. He is just not a very skilled striker. He's good enough, but... So yeah, I pretty much, I do expect to see some fireworks, because I expect Saint-Denis to be really bound and determined to come forward, and I expect Poirier to allow that. He's not a guy who freaks out, and will let the opponent have their game a little bit. I expect his back to near the fence, and I expect Saint-Denis to throw some huge body kicks at him and try to overwhelm him with combinations. I expect even that if Saint-Denis comes out hard enough, he may very well shake Dustin up a little bit or force him into a purely defensive position. But
that was one of the things I was going to touch on, is that, like, again, I kind of trust Poirier to be able to survive with his back to the fence.
Yeah. Like,
again, neither guy, I think, is, like, super positional. Like, but Saint-Denis is probably the more defined pressure fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Much like the McGregor fight, I trust Poirier to be able to survive exchanges with his back to the fence, and I don't trust Saint-Denis to be able to do that. In part because he's got no defense that isn't backing away, and isn't backing away or throwing punches. Like Poirier, if Saint-Denis pushes Poirier back to the fence and starts throwing punches at him, Poirier will defend the punches and still be able to counterpunch. If Saint-Denis gets put into the fence, there's just a really strong chance he's just going to die.
Yeah. I mean, I expect Saint-Denis to actually probably to have more space at his back for most of this fight. I don't think Poirier is going to mind being pressured. And I don't think he's going to find Saint-Denis' brand of pressure such a problem that he feels the need to put him on the back foot. I think it's a relatively straightforward problem to be confronted with. Right, left, right, left, right, left. Like, yeah, Poirier can block and defend those shots and stay calm. Even if he's put purely on defense, Saint-Denis will hit the body. You know, he's got the beginnings of a nice striking game, but it's not so much that I just count on Poirier to get overwhelmed when it's that simple. And I also think, and I've said this many times, that the best part of Poirier's game is his counterpunching.
Yep.
He might take a little bit to get his reads and to get the opponent's rhythm, but once he does, he's a really sharp, tricky counterpuncher. Yeah. Remember, I mean, like in that first Conor McGregor fight, you have the recollection of him crushing McGregor against the fence. That situation arose off of the counterpunching. Where, he hit a low kick and then a nice shot and then pivoted, and suddenly he was in the driver's seat and McGregor was cornered, and then he went into kill mode. That was not the result of a whole pressuring game plan. He just found
I mean, that's what I mean. It's like Saint-Denis is going to be doing it more consistently, but and almost exactly like the McGregor dynamic, it looks like Saint-Denis will do it more consistently. Will put Poirier's back to the fence more, but yes, Poirier can simply survive there. But if Saint-Denis ends up with his back to the fence for whatever reason, he simply looks like the kind of guy who is going to be in bad trouble.
Yeah. The one thing to add in consideration is Saint-Denis' wrestling.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's something else that he will go to. He does in basically every fight when he's given an opportunity. And, I think he's quite a good wrestler. It strikes me as a lot more sophisticated than his striking game. I don't really see it. I think it still usually comes on the back of his opponents being so overwhelmed that they can't meet the initial shot well enough to then deal with the layered takedown threat, which is my favorite thing about his wrestling game, that he actually knows how to attack in sequences and continue off balancing the opponent from different angles and different levels. Poirier, like Sean O'Malley, his stance doesn't just collapse the moment his back nears the fence. He will keep his jab on line, keep his eyes on the opponent, remain facing the guy trying to kill him. But, it's not like it's impossible to take Poirier down. I mean, Eddie Alvarez got him down multiple times. Many people have. It's just rarely a super decisive factor. So I'm taking Poirier, basically, is the story.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Poirier hit his own takedowns either. It's one of those ones where,
Right, yeah.
I don't know if the level of wrestling is high enough on either side
Yeah.
It's going to like be decisive because Poirier he's amongst all the other things. He's a pretty good offensive wrestler.
Yep.
And a very good top position threat.
Yep.
And he will go for it if he feels it's necessary, aka Joe Duffy and so on.
I just shudder to think about a fight where he like starts picking Saint-Denis off with his counters, and then Saint-Denis goes for a takedown, and Poirier pulls a guillotine, and somehow that that results.
Oh, he's probably going to do that, right?
that's why I have to bring up the wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've seen it before.
Got to jump the gilly. I hope Dustin Poirier does get that gilly once in his UFC career.
That would be nice. He's earned it.
Once. Yeah.
He must have gotten one. Has he ever finished it? He must have gotten one. I know he's got like a Darce.
I'm pretty sure he never has. He's like Darce. I think he's Darce people, I think. But I don't think he's ever.
Yeah, let's see. Darce / Bravo.
Never actually guillotined anyone.
Couple of those. Wow, never. I don't think he ever has. That's so funny that it's such a predictable part of his game. He's never finished it once. Buddy.
Yep.
Why do you do that then?
It's got to work sooner or later. That's just statistics, Connor.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just quickly jump over to our... actually, you know what? That's 20 minutes. Let's take a break. And we'll come back and see what we can fit. And we'll squeeze anything else into a bonus. So, quick break. Once we come back, Kevin Holland, Michael Page shouldn't take long, except for it'll be this, can you hear this?
No?
Has that picked, that was me scratching my head. No?
Yep. I also do not know what is going on in this fight. I'm not going to lie.
Great. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll try to figure out what the hell it is.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about Petr Yan versus Song Yadong. They're just sort of
sure about this one.
Step by step, moving Yan down the ladder of
people he should beat.
Yeah, basically, of like Merab is a super consistent, reliable opponent. Ooh, we absolutely did not pass that test. How about a guy who's definitely dangerous, definitely a fringe contender, but also kind of inconsistent? How about this one? Do we have do we have a solid working theory for what exactly has happened to Petr Yan?
No. It was one of those ones where we never, a bunch of people had theories, and I just none of them really ring true to me. I just don't know whether he's, something's gone wrong with him mentally, or whether there were just gaps in the game that we never really saw. One of the things is, someone showed a highlight of him on Twitter, and kind of you must have forgotten kind of a highlight reel of Petr Yan doing things, and I was like, man, this is a lot of big huge swings. It's like him spinning back elbowing people and him lunging through.
That's the thing we were
down Jimmy Vera, and I was like, we always used to say he's great, but he really does this too. I don't like when he does this.
Yeah, that's the thing we got in trouble for pointing out repeatedly among his fans. We knew that was a problem.
I was like, was this always just a sort of unremovable part of his game. But then I also remember things like the Corey Sandhagen fight.
Yeah.
You know? Or the Jose Aldo fight. Like, these weren't mirages.
Yep.
This wasn't just someone, ace tanking their way through, through technicians to crush them.
Yep.
Like a Vera would. These were genuinely like principled, principled, skilled fights against incredibly good fighters. I just don't, it's weird. I just don't know. I cannot find where I draw the line for Petr Yan in when it comes to he was always flawed and matchup dependent versus something has gone badly wrong with him. Because I suspect it's one of the two, but I just cannot figure out where the line is drawn. I
mean, likely it is not just one of the two, right? Very human tendency.
Oh, sorry, I mean it's both of them. Yeah,
right. Yeah. It's hard to know where to place the proportion.
Yeah, I do not know how you weight each one.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that is worth talking about. The thing is that we were always saying with Petr Yan is, I think you could class Petr Yan as, like a souped up Matt Brown, a technical brawler.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has always been that guy, really confident, knows he hits like a truck, willing to take damage if he has to. And I think the Corey Sandhagen fight, one of his most impressive, if not his most impressive performance against a really, really, really good fighter in Corey Sandhagen. A good fighter in his prime.
Mm.
And the thing is, even in that performance, which you can feel the brilliancy of Petr Yan's adjustment and the sheer breadth and flexibility of his game on the feet, it does still come down in a nuanced way to him just swinging, swinging on Corey Sandhagen. It's a very, it's a savvy kind of brawling, but it is still there's a point in almost every Petr Yan fight where he just says, no, fuck you, and decides he's not going to respond defensively to whatever the opponent is doing that is working against him. He is going to let it happen and crash through. A bit maybe like Carlos Condit as well in that way. Like, you're hitting me, but what if I hit you at the same time with this instead of that? And then it catches the opponent by surprise. It's about taking that calculated risk in order to then seize the initiative, which he will then hold on to brilliantly for the rest of the fight. I mean, that's the brilliance of Petr Yan, is once he has you reactive, he's like a god because he can do everything. He's a great kicker. He's a phenomenal wrestler. He is genuinely a very skilled boxer with solid, tight defense who can throw great combinations as well as a big power puncher. So once he has the initiative, he's really, really slick and creative. But to get to the point where he has the opponent responding to him, to the point where he has the lead, it usually is just like a calculated, big, risky swing. And that is true against Corey Sandhagen too.
Yep.
He has a feeling out phase with Corey. They're fencing, and Corey kind of starts to pull away. And basically Petr Yan just says, I'm going to keep throwing when you think the exchange is done. And I'm going to ignore what you're throwing at me and just blast through with a longer, harder combination.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. And now he's just, I mean, Merab is a special case, obviously.
Well, I think he's basically he's fighting people who you cannot give initiative to.
Yeah.
Because they simply will never stop. They will, I often talked about this as a problem with Robbie Lawler.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, Johnny Hendricks, is that, if your style is built on giving people time and space, there's certain people who will just stay on top of you will get on top of you and just stay on top of you forever.
Yeah.
From an initiative standpoint. And Marab is, when he's fighting, quote unquote, correctly, is the absolute archetype of this.
Marab is an avalanche. When he gets control of the fight, you're done. You are absolutely cooked. Yeah, it just doesn't stop. It's the O'Malley one that is harder to figure out. And the Sterling one. I mean, again.
Well, the Sterling fight, both the Sterling fights are really, Sterling simply takes that opportunity for aggression on his own part.
He grabs the initiative
That
immediately.
time, he grabs the initiative and dumps everything into maintaining it.
Yep.
To the extent that he can't actually maintain over the back half of the fight, but it doesn't. At least in the second fight, it doesn't matter because he's won the first 3 rounds by that point.
Exactly. Yeah. He just says, "I'm going to do everything to bank 3 rounds." That's pretty much why he wins. But still, the thing is that, and maybe that's just because of who Jan is, and because he does need to sort of get the game rolling by about the end of the second round to really look his best. He doesn't actually come. When Sterling is gassed, he cannot get back into the fight. It's too late at that point. That's the surprising thing.
Well, I mean, and in both the Sterling and O'Malley fights are characterized by the fact that he's been fighting this fight where they've taken the initiative, or at least Sterling takes the initiative, and both the Sterling fights, as a matter of fact, is that the thing was that Piotr would get the initiative. He would wait for the initiative to come to him. He would download people and then he would destroy them.
Yeah.
But in both of those fights, once the other guy is, in trouble, or in Sterling's case, absolutely knackered, he just starts out wrestling him.
Yeah.
Surely you should just knock him out.
Yeah, that's the weird
thing. Your downloads, you are Piotr Jan, but he's now just stuck in responding in wrestling mode.
Yeah, maybe that's it. He has spent, you're right, he has spent that time processing all the answers, but maybe as a purely tactical fighter, he's been suckered into coming up with all of the least efficient answers for actually getting the fight, getting the win back. He just gets, sucked into wrestling mode. That's an interesting way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, that is, to me, still one of the most shocking things about the Sterling fights, is that, doesn't even win the back half of the first Sterling fight that. He's not doing damage. Sterling is just falling over.
Yeah.
Because he's absolutely gassed.
Yeah.
And Jan just isn't able to really hurt him until he knees him in the head.
Yeah, he hurts people when he makes them exchange with him on the feet.
Mm-hmm.
And their response to his initiative is to swing and open themselves up. Yeah.
That's that Sandhagen fight. That's a part of the O'Malley fight.
Yes. Yeah. And how do you explain the O'Malley fight? The fact that he can't really fully get into the driver's seat. He gets hurt first in that fight, if I recall correctly. He gets dropped with the hilariously huge right hand, I believe, from Sean O'Malley.
Mm-hmm.
Recovers, and then I think it's in the second round when he drops O'Malley.
I think they hurt each other in the same round. That's one of the things that makes it.
I think you're right, actually. Yes.
Tricky fight. I think O'Malley hurts him first
in the second round. Both in the second, right?
The first round is very clear.
Yeah.
Then O'Malley hurts him first in the second round, and then Jan
hurts him,
crushes him.
Possibly, worse.
Hurts him much worse.
Yeah.
And then the third round is just not all that much happens.
Well, plenty happens. It's just not very decisive.
Yeah.
But why? I mean, why did that not turn into him then just dictating the rest of the fight and just styling on O'Malley? What went wrong for Piotr Jan? I mean, that one is difficult for me to explain. But then if I flip that on its head, it's difficult for me to clearly explain why Corey Sandhagen was able to compete but not win a round.
He just doesn't. just doesn't hit as hard as
Maybe
Sean
that's it.
O'Malley.
Yeah, maybe that's it. He's just
He
not as
doesn't- I mean,
dangerous.
he lands much more than Sean O'Malley does.
That's fair. He's just
In that
not as hard hitting. Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
that's it. Just can't match the firepower.
I think honestly, that's the dumbest and most accurate explanation.
I think you got it. I think you got it. Yeah, Occam's razor on that one. It's just that he's definitely able to compete and make adjustments. Sandhagen, he just can't hurt Jan. Piotr Jan is Chito Vera, is what we're realizing. He simply hits harder than the other guy. So anyway, here we have Song Yadong. Hits hard. Hits very hard. And if you're going to have exchanges with him, can win some of those exchanges. When Song Yadong loses, it's because the other guy's footwork is better, usually.
Right? That's what makes this one so weird. Is that, like, both of these guys are good in exactly the same, like, pocket of space.
Yeah. The difference being
Jan's
that
going to fight him in the place where Jan is, really very good.
Yeah.
But, like, Yadong is also really good in that spot of space, and potentially one of the few people who is simply just more potent than Jan in that space.
or at least equally.
He might actually
you know.
be... Yeah. He might be, like... In terms of pure athleticism, I think I would put Song Yadong as a small notch above Jan. In terms of, like, sheer power and
speed. He's so fast.
and speed. He's so quick.
Yeah. And
But yeah,
he
I
has
think it's just a fight where, like, both of them will have the opportunity to have, like, their best their best selves on display. It'll be an incredible fight, I think.
Yeah. And Song has the advantage
look.
of being 5 years younger and coming in on the back of 2 consecutive wins. Piotr Jan has now lost 3 in a row. Each one sort of, well, maybe not, but the last of them, the most demoralizing experience of his entire career, without a doubt. I mean, he was a broken man well before the end of that fight with Merab. He was broken.
Yep.
I mean, credit to him, he's had a pretty decently long layoff. I think he almost certainly needed that. It's been a full year. And I think that was probably the right move. No, if he had jumped right back in there, he probably would have looked terrible. That's my guess. But yeah, that is the difficulty, is that, like, yeah, Song Yadong is, I mean, his footwork isn't as good as Piotr Jan's, but Piotr Jan is not going to come in there and, like, outbox him off the back foot. He's not going
to come in, looking to... He's not going to come in like Corey Sandhagen.
He's a better pressure
you know
fighter.
This guy's bad.
Yeah.
You know what this guy's bad at?
Yeah.
I'm going to fight in a way that exactly exploits that.
Exactly. He's a better pressure fighter. He's got better pressuring footwork than Song Yadong, no question. But what that will lead him to is a range where both he and Song Yadong can pit power against power. And then it comes down to things like durability and gas tank, and fuck, it's going to be a brutal fight, isn't it? I just feel like it is.
Yeah, I mean, on the technical side of things, I still, I like Jan for all those reasons. He's just a more diverse fighter.
Absolutely.
He goes to the body, he mixes up his combinations more. He's much better defensively.
He's a much more subtle combination puncher. He can change not just the target, but he can change up his speed and his timing. He can mix in feints into the middle of combinations. Song doesn't really do any of that. It's like full blast when he's throwing every time. Much more like Josh Emmett.
He can, and it's always worth noting, he can mix up which stance he's fighting from. He's a really good southpaw fighter. I don't necessarily know that it will matter because Song has hips like steel, but Jan is a more effective like offensive wrestler.
Yeah.
Could potentially pick up a takedown, as I believe did Sandhagen? No, it was when Sandhagen went to the floor with Song Yadong. It was because
I think he got Song Yadong
cut
down
a kick
once.
or something. Yeah,
I think he got Song Yadong down once.
yeah, I think he did take him down. It was super late, and Yadong was like very messed up by that point. I think he did take him down.
According to stats, Ricky Simone got Song down twice, but 51 seconds of control. I mean, Casey Kenny got Song down once, 26 seconds of control. I mean, nobody has both taken him down and controlled him on the ground, basically.
Yeah.
Except for way back, I think against Cody Stamen, he might have. Yeah, Cody Stamen got 6.5 minutes. Since then, everybody who's taken him down, he has immediately got back to his feet.
Yeah. So, and this is such a weird thing to be in this situation, because I find myself thinking, that I kind of have to pick Jan. Yeah. Because he is the better fighter.
Yep.
But I picked Jan against O'Malley because I was like, I think Petr Yan is a terrible matchup for Sean O'Malley. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't. And I was like, he is a poisonous matchup for Merab. You know, if what's his face if Ricky Simone can have this kind of knockdown drag out fight with Merab, or what's his face back in the day, the bantamweight who first gave him real trouble,
Frankie Saenz,
old dude,
maybe? Frankie Saenz.
Yeah, Frankie Saenz, yeah. Then Jan is much more dangerous in the pocket, ironclad defensive wrestler, blah blah blah. So twice I have seen people in fights, and I've been like, this is a really good matchup for Petr Yan, and he's just lost it.
Mm-hmm.
Either convincingly or not, he's still lost it. This time, I'm like, it's a pretty good matchup for his opponent. One of the better style matchups I feel for Song Yadong.
Not that that doesn't mean it's an easy fight. It's just that it's one where all of his best attributes are going to get to be used. It's not a matchup that seems to neutralize the things that Song Yadong just naturally does very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still think I kind of have to pick Jan.
I would almost say it's not a good matchup for Song Yadong. It's just that bad matchups for Song Yadong feel more like unfair matchups. This feels like a fair matchup for him. The matchup is either one where he gets to do big, powerful, fast punches in the pocket, or he doesn't. And this is one where he's going to get that chance.
Yep.
So yeah.
But yes, I suspect it's going to be against someone who's just better than him at it.
Yeah, I mean, if Petr Yan was not, I mean, I don't really know where his head's at. Like, how much of how utterly terrible he looked in the Merab fight was because he was, even then, coming off of 2 humiliating defeats. I mean, it could all go back to the Aljo fight. Like, I still think he came into that Sterling rematch extremely overconfident. And he got the biggest serving of humble pie any fighter has ever eaten. Like, that was such a cliff to fall off of, such a height of hubris. Like, he just knew he was going to win that fight, and then the impossible happened. And I think since then, I do have a feeling like Jan has just been fighting with a chip on his shoulder that he can't get rid of. And that his decision making is not as good as a result.
He's forcing.
Yes.
He's forcing things.
Yeah, a guy who has always needed to force things in a very sort of calculated, well-timed way is now just trying to force it all the time. Too much. Rushing. Doesn't have the patience. He no longer feels like a fighter who is like, okay, well, I can have a whole round where I sort of lose on volume, as long as I'm using my defense and getting my reads. It doesn't feel like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the problem. If I assume this is the Petr Yan who fought Corey Sandhagen, then style matchup wise, it looks like a pretty 50-50 kind of fight where I would just pick the better guy. But I don't know where Petr Yan is at. And I got to assume he's really feels he has something to prove more so than ever before. And so far, I don't think he seems to have responded to that kind of pressure very well.
Yep. Yeah, that's why it makes it so tough. Because I kind of feel like I have to pick him, but I had felt like that in almost all of his last few fights.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, then now you're just being like, here's a, relatively surging young prospect who's going to have a super violent fight with him. Just like, do I trust Leon to win this? Do I trust him nowadays?
Yeah. I you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to pick Song Yadong. It's a total coin flip for me.
Right.
It's just if Yan comes in and if, he gets into that point where he just has to throw one away and start slinging to get the initiative and Song Yadong just takes the shots and keeps throwing with him. I don't know how he responds to that. Maybe he gets hurt first. Who knows?
Yeah. Maybe this is like the first person. Yeah, maybe this is literally the first person he's ever fought. Like I said, he's the first person he's ever fought who is just more potent in the pocket than him.
Like what if Jose Aldo, who doesn't gas,
Yeah.
Because Aldo was potent enough. Aldo was matching or exceeding him in speed and power, but Aldo was bound to gas.
Yep.
And that's a big part of why that turn happened, how and when it did.
Yep.
Song can gas, but usually it's from like swinging and missing and chasing people, not from just getting to have exchanges. I don't know. I also really want to pick Petr Yan. It's just the trepidation. It's the, I'm just going to take a flyer.
I want to pick Song Yadong.
I'm just taking a flyer on him.
Because I've been way more confident about all my other picks I've made for Petr Yan than every time I've just been like, oh yeah, he's got this. Well, he didn't have that one, but he's got this.
Mm-hmm.
And every fucking time with this guy.
A fascinating fall from grace, Petr Yan, really. One of the, still, even more so now that he's losing, like one of the most perplexing and interesting fighters to think and talk about.
Yeah, because I still don't really feel like I've understood what has happened with this guy, and maybe I just never will.
I think we kind of got to the heart of it. I think it's much simpler than we want it to be, because there's all this brilliant stuff Petr Yan does, but it's like, well, what if he just doesn't hit harder?
He only does it once they're... Yeah.
He's just got to hit harder and find a point where he can just turn the balance enough where they have to start like respecting his power, and then he can flow. And when that doesn't happen, then he just has to have a war.
Yep.
And wars go either way. All right. Well, that will do it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. If you listen to this and you were thinking, hey, what about Fight X that I wanted to hear about? Go to the Heavy Hands Patreon. We talked about it there. We appreciate all of you listening. What we were alluding to at the top of the show, of course, is that Bloody Elbow, which was the home of my writing career and a portion of my podcasting career, is now officially dead. We tried our best, tried to make it work with the Substack. Just not profitable enough, basically, to pay a whole team of people and continue churning out the kind of quality work that Bloody Elbow was known for. Truly a tragedy, honestly. Like, it is. I don't think there is a single other MMA media outfit that actually does like real investigative reporting.
Yep.
There isn't one. Even some former BE journalists who left basically stopped doing that after they left BE, because most of the companies do better than BE ever did because they play nice with the UFC. That's the game. The site had a really, really good run, considering that it basically flew in the face of it's frankly just not like designed for the ecosystem of MMA media which is all about
or indeed
access.
The media of media in general, yeah.
True. Yeah. It's all about access journalism. That's how you remain solvent and profitable. And, that was never the BE thing. And of course, also a place that hosted a ton of great technical writing. Much of it much better than the kind of stuff I do. Of course, Jack Slack got his start with Bloody Elbow. Miguel Class has been doing great writing, breaking down technique. There's too many names to name. A bunch of people have done, really fascinating fight breakdowns in addition to all the great journalism. So it's a tragedy. I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen. I will say that I am considering giving like a Substack of my own a try. Obviously will not be doing all of the wonderful investigative journalism that BE was known for, but fight breakdowns and opinion pieces, that kind of thing I can handle. So, I will give you updates on that if that comes to fruition in the future. And, if you are listening to this and you happen to be affiliated with an MMA media outlet, Zane Simon, Crooklyn, Steffi, Haynes, me, everybody's looking for jobs. So give those people Anton Tabuena. I mean, you have some really seasoned editors and writers out there who have done tremendous work and are really, really good team players. So all of those people deserve to be compensated well for the quality of work they're able to do. Anyway, that is it. Yeah, go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, yeah, BE was like a rare place. I think even when the kind of idea of, you know, websites fueled by ad revenue and that kind of, and that you could basically make money off things for people to read.
Yep.
Was still around.
Yep.
Even then, it was a rare thing that kind of stood out amongst all the other sites in the space. I don't think we're likely to see much like it again. But yeah, I'm very sad to see it go. I was very proud to be a member of it for a while. It's where I met you and so many of the other great people that I've known in MMA. It's where I really sort of got into the sport. And yeah, it was a great place for technique. It was a great place for looking at what really makes the sport tick. And we're all the poorer for having lost it.
Yep. Who's going to report on this lawsuit? No one. No one seems to be the answer, but pretty good run. And that'll do it for Bloody Elbow and for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. Thank you as always for your support. I will admonish you once again to check out the Patreon, listen to the bonus episode. We covered a good bit of material that is not on this week's main show from UFC 299. And as for last week's card, Gaziv versus Rosenstreich, let us never speak of it again, except for when the handies roll around. All right, until next week, we're going to have a lot of fun talking about all the crazy shit that's bound to happen at 299. I've been Connor. Find me on Twitter at BoxingBush. Find Phil at Evil Greg Jackson. Support us in the Patreon. We love you. We appreciate it. And if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.